My wife texted from Maui. Just married my business partner, you're pathetic, BTW. I replied, cool. Then I blocked her cards and changed the house locks. Next morning, 2 angry cops showed up at my door. The knock wasn't polite. It was the kind that sounded like someone already believed you were guilty. 3 hard strikes, wood shuddering against the frame. I looked at the clock on the wall. 6:12 a.m. Too early for neighbors. Too angry for deliveries. Another knock, louder, then a voice. Police, open the door. For a second, I just stood there in the hallway, barefoot, cold coffee in my hand. My brain moved slowly, like it had just woken up from anesthesia. Police? I hadn't done anything. At least, not technically. Another pound on the door. Sir, we know you're inside. Of course you do. My car was in the driveway, lights on in the kitchen. I set the coffee mug down, walked toward the door, each step calm, measured. Because panic is loud, and I'd spent the last 12 hours learning how to be very quiet. I unlocked the deadbolt, opened the door. 2 officers stood on the porch. One tall, one thick-necked, both irritated. The tall one spoke first. We received a report of financial fraud and unlawful property seizure. His eyes scanned the house behind me. You want to explain why your wife claims you locked her out and drained her accounts? My stomach didn't twist, didn't drop. It did something colder than that. It settled. Because 12 hours earlier, my wife sent me a text from Maui, and everything changed. The message arrived at 11:47 p.m. I remember the exact time because I had just finished reviewing quarterly reports for the company. Our company, or so I thought. My phone buzzed on the desk. Her name lit up the screen. Lauren, my wife of 9 years. I smiled automatically. The reflex of someone who still believed in routine affection. Then I opened the message. And the smile died quietly. 2 sentences, that's all it took. Just married my business partner. You're pathetic, BTW. A photo followed. Beach at sunset. White dress. Flowers. And standing next to her? Mark, my business partner. My best friend. My mind didn't explode. Didn't scream. It went silent. Like a room where someone had just turned off the electricity. I studied the picture. Zoomed in. Lauren's smile. The way she leaned into him. His arm around her waist. Comfortable. Practiced. Not new. Which meant this hadn't started in Maui. This had started a long time ago. My phone buzzed again. Another message. Don't bother calling. We're celebrating. I stared at the screen. 9 years. A house. A company. A shared bank account. Shared credit cards. Shared life. And apparently, shared betrayal. I typed 1 word. Cool. Hit send. Then I put the phone down. No yelling. No begging. No dramatic drive to the airport. Just silence. Because betrayal like that doesn't deserve emotion. It deserves strategy. And strategy requires calm. The first thing I did was open my laptop. Not to read old messages. Not to cry. I logged into our financial dashboard. Lauren and I owned everything jointly. Business accounts. Credit lines. Investment portfolios. Mortgage. The digital skeleton of a marriage. And I had administrative access. I clicked through the permissions slowly. Mark's name appeared in several places. Recent changes. New authorizations. Transfers scheduled. Interesting. Very interesting. They hadn't just planned a wedding. They'd planned an exit. Money was already moving. Small amounts. Careful amounts. Amounts that wouldn't trigger alerts. They thought they were clever. What they forgot was that I built the system. Every safeguard. Every notification. Every silent audit. I leaned back in the chair. Studied the screen. Then I started making adjustments. First, Lauren's personal credit cards. Blocked. Travel expenses in Maui suddenly became very inconvenient. Second, Mark's corporate access. Restricted. He could still log in, but the permissions had changed. He just didn't know it yet. Third, the house. Technically. Legally. My property. Inherited before marriage. Lauren's name was never added to the deed. Something she used to joke about. Guess you could kick me out anytime. I never laughed. Now I changed the smart lock codes. Every door. Every gate. Every garage entry. Access removed. Then I transferred the remaining liquid funds from the joint account into a legal, holding account under the company's compliance clause. Perfectly legitimate. Perfectly documented. Not theft. Protection. I worked quietly for 3 hours. No anger. Just precision. When I finally closed the laptop, it was 3:08 a.m. My phone buzzed again. Lauren. 3 messages. Why are my cards declining? Pause. Mark can't access the accounts. Another pause. Then the last one. What the hell did you do? I didn't respond. Because by then, the game had already ended. They just hadn't realized it yet. Around 5:30 a.m., my phone rang. Mark. I let it ring. Then it rang again. Then Lauren. Then Mark again. Voicemail notifications stacked up. Desperate. Confused. Angry. Finally, a text appeared. From Mark. You can't just freeze company funds. I almost smiled. Can't? I opened my laptop again. Pulled up the document they clearly hadn't read. The partnership agreement. Page 14. Clause 9. Financial irregularities. Trigger automatic asset protection under managing partner authority. Managing partner. That was me. Always had been. Mark was a minority stakeholder. A detail he loved to ignore. I forwarded the clause to his phone. Nothing else. 5 minutes later, Lauren called again. This time I answered. Her voice exploded through the speaker. What did you do? I leaned back in the chair. Calm. Measured. I protected the company. You drained our account. No, I said quietly. I secured company assets from internal fraud. Silence. Then Mark's voice appeared in the background. Put it on speaker. Lauren hesitated. Then did. I could hear the ocean behind them. Waves. Wind. Honeymoon ambiance. Strange soundtrack for a collapse. Mark spoke. You're overreacting. I rubbed my temple slowly. No, Mark. I'm responding. He tried again. You can't lock us out. I opened the document again. Scrolled. Actually, and I can. Silence fell on their end. Heavy. Realization spreading like frost. Lauren spoke again. Quieter now. You're being insane. I closed the laptop. No, I said softly. You two just underestimated me. And that brings us back to the door. The police. Standing on my porch at dawn. The tall officer crossed his arms. So, financial fraud? I leaned against the doorframe. No. Legal asset protection. He frowned. Your wife says you emptied your joint accounts. Temporary freeze. For investigation. The thick-necked officer stepped forward. Investigation of what? I walked inside. Returned with a folder. Printed documents. Contracts. Bank records. Partnership agreements. Everything organized. Everything time-stamped. I handed it to them. Internal corporate dispute. The tall officer skimmed the pages. His expression shifted slowly. Annoyance, turning into boredom. The universal police response to paperwork. Finally, he sighed. This is civil. Exactly. Not criminal. Civil. Lauren had hoped I'd panic. Reverse everything. Big. Instead, I documented everything. He handed the folder back. You two need a lawyer. I nodded. I already have one. They left. No sirens. No handcuffs. Just a quiet retreat down the driveway. I closed the door. And right on cue, my phone buzzed again. Lauren, one message. You're ruining everything. I stared at the screen, then typed. No. Pause. You did that. Another message arrived seconds later. You're going to regret this. I looked around the house. Silent, peaceful, empty of lies. Then I blocked her number. The divorce took 6 months. Lauren returned from Maui early. Apparently, honeymoons are less romantic when the credit cards stop working. Mark tried to sue for company control. That lasted about 3 weeks. Turns out lawyers read contracts more carefully than cheating partners. In the end, Mark lost his shares. Lauren lost the house, and both of them lost the company they thought they had stolen. I kept everything, not because I fought harder, but because I prepared better. Sometimes betrayal isn't loud. It's quiet. 2 people smiling behind your back, planning your disappearance. But they made one mistake. They assumed I would react emotionally. They expected rage, or heartbreak, or begging. Instead, I responded with silence. And strategy. Now the house feels different. Not lonely, just honest. No hidden messages. No fake smiles. No late-night business trips. Just quiet, real quiet. The kind that comes after a storm finally passes. Sometimes people ask if I miss her. I usually just shrug. Because the truth is simple. I didn't lose a wife. I discovered an enemy. And enemies are much easier to remove from your life. Permanently